Hi, my name's Mick Napier for Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign. It's Thursday the 20th of May and I'm looking at the headlines in Al Jazeera. The main headline is "More Death, Destruction in Gaza" as Netanyahu defies the truce call. They have a story called "This Time It's Different, Gaza Journalists on the Israeli Bombardment," and that's timed from yesterday. They quote 4 Palestinian journalists. One of them is called Ghalia Hamad, and she starts off her story by saying, "It is the first time that we've experienced such an offensive with this ferocity." These are Palestinian journalists on the ground in Gaza. And to say that it's unparalleled ferocity, given the barbarity of previous assaults, 2014, 2,200 killed, quarter of them children, and other massacres. This really contrasts greatly with the stuff in the BBC and the British mainstream media, which really is very keen to establish balance between lightly armed Palestinians and massively armed Israel. And we need to remember how it started. The assault on Gaza started with the eviction of Palestinians, throwing families onto the street in East Jerusalem, part of the public Judaization campaign, it's called in Israel, to kick out Palestinians and bring in Zionist Jews from around the world. And it then moved on to a massive attack on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is not exempted from Israel's programme to remove all signs of Palestinian habitation in Israel, claim that they've never been there, it was an empty land for incomers. And that was a brutal attack which forced the Palestinians in Gaza to respond. They fired some rockets into Israel in retaliation to come to the aid of their beleaguered co-nationals in the West Bank, and also inside Israel itself, so-called Israel proper, inside 48, where fascist gangs were and are roaming the streets to beat up, assault Palestinians in what used to be called a pogrom, when it was aimed against Jews in Europe by fascists and their ilk. Where we are now is an assault of unparalleled ferocity, say Palestinian journalists. What do? We've got some welcome statements from Scottish political figures. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, made a statement strongly condemning Israel's savagery. The Justice Minister, I think, Humza Yousaf, whose family is in Gaza, said much the same thing. The Labour Party leader, Anas Sarwar, was very similar in his condemnations of what Israel was doing. In terms of Scottish public opinion, how could it be otherwise? Only the Tories, I think, justified the massacres. But statements aren't enough. The Israelis deal with statements. It's just water off a duck's back. They know it's only a statement and they can carry on what they call mowing the lawn. The Western media are now full of talk of a ceasefire, as if that would end the crisis. They want a return to normality and what Netanyahu calls the establishment of calm. His calm is the calm of the cemetery, where all Palestinian resistance is crushed. And that is taken seriously when he calls for calm by Western media. We need action. The SNP have made a nice statement, but we're very worried that the new External Affairs Minister is Angus Robertson. And Angus Robertson was once feted by the Israeli embassy. Shai Massot was shown during the Al Jazeera sting operation to say he loved Angus Robertson. Angus Robertson was really somebody that they welcomed. When he came back from a trip, an official SNP trip to Israel, Angus Robertson praised Israel's success as a start-up nation, and he looked forward to the huge potential for trade and tourism with Scotland. That is someone who is a very determined enemy of the Palestinian call to boycott and isolate Israel. We welcome the statement from Anas Sarwar of the Labour Party, but we can't forget that their leader is Sir Keir Starmer, a man who has established his credentials by trying to crush pro-Palestine voices inside the Labour Party. We need action, and all these calls lack any call for action, any call for sanctions. We need the Israeli ambassador to be shunned. The Speaker of the Welsh Assembly did it quite a few years ago. There's no reason why the Scottish Government cannot tell this ambassador she is a monster, she's an open advocate of ethnic cleansing, and no decent politician should have anything to do with her. The Palestine flag flies over the Dundee city chambers 365 days a year. We need the same thing in other Scottish cities. It's within the gift of those who say they love Palestine to fly that flag, not for 24 hours as happened in Glasgow or other cities, but every single day until Palestinians win their freedom. The Zionist lobby in Scotland is working flat out to justify the crimes, to defend the crimes, and to say that Israel is a model democracy whose example we should follow. We need to respond to the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment and sanctions, and make that the dividing line between those who really support Palestine and those who utter empty words or sincere words that stop short of action. What is BDS? BDS is not just, of course, not buying anything Israeli in supermarkets or whatever, but it needs to be more than that. It's a worldwide campaign where people meet and discuss and strategize in order to persuade artists not to perform in Israel, in order to protest in Scotland or Belgium or France or everywhere whenever Israeli state-sponsored events are scheduled for their soil. It's a campaign. We need you to join in the discussion, to join in the strategizing, and to join in the campaigning to target, to find suitable targets and to win victories or to recognize defeats. Please move. This is an unprecedentedly ferocious attack on the people of Gaza. It's not over. Don't be lulled by the Western media. Please move, organise your protests. Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign exists to help people who want to do things. Get in touch and we can supply you with leaflets and placards and anything else that we possibly can, speakers, etc., information, data. Move and we'll help. Don't wait for other people. There's a demonstration in Edinburgh on Sunday at 2 p.m. Assemble on Princes Street at the foot of the mound. The theme is to end the Scottish arms trade with Israel. We will assemble. We will hear Palestinian voices and others. We will demonstrate. We will march to a suitable target in Edinburgh city centre. We have to march because the killing continues. It starts with Netanyahu wanting to establish his political credentials by killing and abusing Palestinians, the best way for an Israeli politician to rise to the top. The response he got, I think, took him utterly by surprise, as Palestinians right across the whole of historic Palestine moved in ways that we haven't seen before, in unity. They have created national unity despite political leadership which is very, very disunited. We need to move. There are arms factories across the whole of Scotland which supply parts which are used to massacre Palestinians and Yemenis. Leonardo in Edinburgh supplies parts for tanks which are used to shell and murder Palestinians inside the Gaza concentration zone. Pension funds across Scotland are still invested in companies that facilitate the crime, and you can help to stop that. High street banks also invest in companies that facilitate the crime, and we can do something about that. We are also calling a demonstration in Glenrothes at the Raytheon factory in Glenrothes in Fife on the first Saturday in June. Assemble outside the county buildings and march to the Raytheon factory to try to bring an end to this obscene trade where the means of murder are produced in Scotland, and our Palestinian friends are under these bombs. We personally know people whose family has been slaughtered by bombs produced in Scotland and dropped on Gaza. What else can we say? It's a desperately sad time, but Palestinians resist. Complicity among our political elites is very, very extensive indeed, and our corporate elites, but popular opinion is inexorably moving in the direction where we can work to isolate the apartheid state. Ireland has moved a boycott motion in their parliament that may very well be successful. Scotland needs to do the same thing. So join us on Princes Street in Edinburgh on Sunday, 3 days' time. Please bring your friends, bring your placards. There will be social distancing, masks, hand gel, etc. We are very well aware of the danger to the population in Scotland of 180,000 dead, is it? Under a regime of criminal irresponsibility in London. But we judge on balance that we need to come out and demonstrate publicly in support of the people of Gaza, the West Bank, all of Palestine. While the UK government still authorises arms sales, still authorises the sale of sniper rifle parts to Israel to kill Palestinians with impunity. Friends, I hope to see you in Edinburgh on Sunday, 2 o'clock at the foot of the mound on Princes Street, and send a message to Palestine that they are not forgotten. If there is a ceasefire, that will be very welcome between now and then, but the Israeli military called their operations in Gaza mowing the lawn. Killing large numbers of Palestinians for them is cutting grass to bring it back down to the level where they can continue with life as normal. Even when this massacre ends, they will be planning their next one. Not the timing, but how they will do it when the time comes around at an opportune moment. An advisor to an Israeli Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, I forget his name, he was a professor of geostrategy, apparently, and he said, the Palestinians in Gaza, quote unquote, will become even greater animals, unquote. And he said, then we will have to, quote, kill and kill and kill and kill every day, unquote. That's the Israeli approach to the animals of Gaza. It's utterly disgusting. And every decent person who calls himself or herself anti-racist needs to oppose the apartheid state of Israel. It's not a side issue. It's a core part of being consistently anti-racist and fighting this terrible scourge of our own societies. Friends, thanks for listening. Please use the event page to share, and hope to see you in Edinburgh on Sunday, 2 p.m.